Hi, I'm Sherry and this is Gardening in the North. All of my videos have either been in the garden or in the kitchen, and I thought today I would pick a topic that was a little bit more directed to what is going on in the world right now. So we are currently on the verge of a possible second wave of COVID. And I think that it's really important for all of us to become self-sufficient and to rely a lot less on the grocery stores, but more so on ourselves. And so I know that there are probably a lot of people out there that want to garden, but maybe, due to COVID and what's going on in the world right now, they can't. They can't possibly fit that into their budget. So I want to share with you a couple tips that you can try that may encourage you to start gardening on a budget. First thing I want to talk about is composting. But before we can talk about composting, we need to talk about what you're going to compost in. A lot of municipalities that are starting up their composting and recycle programs will actually provide all of their residents a free container or bin to use so that they can participate in that program. If you haven't received yours, I would suggest that you call your local municipality and find out if they're offering this. If they're not, one of the things that you can do is you can visit your local thrift store and ask them if they have any damaged Rubbermaid containers. And the reason I say damaged is that you're going to be keeping it outside. So if it has a crack in it or a hole in the bottom, it doesn't matter. That's fine. You're going to need drainage anyways. A lot of the times people will donate in Rubbermaid containers because that container is no longer any good. I know that my mom has actually gone to our local thrift store and has purchased numerous Rubbermaid containers for my dad that she only paid $1 or $2 for. So it's an idea that you might want to look into. Now that you have your bin or options for a bin, let's talk about compost. You want to make sure that you're adding all your kitchen scraps minus the meat. So you want to add in all of your cooked and raw veggies, your coffee grounds, your used tea bags. You want to also add in eggshells because it gives it a good amount of calcium, but you want to make sure that you blend them up. And they don't have to be super fine, but I personally would blend them up as much as you can. Eggshells take a long time to break down. And so when you're throwing them into your compost bin in the hopes that the next season you're going to use it, you won't get the benefits from the eggshells until 2 years later because those eggshells don't break up for a long time. The other thing that you can put into your compost that is considered greens are grass clippings, manure from animals like cows, horses, chickens, rabbits, things like that. You don't want to put in any manure from your cat or your dogs. And you really do want to do your research on manure in general. I know that for horse manure, you have to make sure that it actually sits for a period of time before you add it in. The other thing that you can add into your compost as part of your greens are weeds. However, you want to make sure that your weeds haven't gone to seed. So it can be a bit tricky because you need to ensure that you're not putting weed seed into your compost bin, because what will happen is when you use that compost next year, you're basically spreading weeds throughout your whole vegetable garden, and that's the last thing you want. For those of you that don't think you'll be able to produce enough greens in order to get a good quantity of compost going, one of the things that you can do is you can reach out to family and friends who are not gardeners but do compost, and you can kindly ask them to place that green bin bag in their freezer for you. And once a week you can stop by their house, grab the bag, and then you have extra greens to put into your compost bin. Doing this will ensure that at the end of the season or the beginning of the new summer season, you have a good pile of compost to use. Let's talk about browns. browns are your carbon or carbohydrate mixed materials, such as your recycled egg cartons. And so normally what I would do is I would just rip pieces off, throw them in, and layer it up with my greens. The other thing that you can use is your paper towel rolls, your toilet paper rolls. You can also shred up newspaper. I would just caution you to only use the matte finish and not the shiny type of newspaper. Other things that you can use are wood ash, you can use sawdust, and most importantly, you can use leaves. And I say most importantly because in about a month, you're going to be able to drive around and see that everybody is putting out their leaf bags. Leaf bags that are filled with leaves that they've raked up from their property because they're most likely not composting. And so if you know the person, you can ask them, you know, is it okay if you have that bag? You know, have any of your trees or bushes had any disease? And if they answer no, then I would suggest that you take that bag and it's free browns for your compost bin. The main job of the browns in your compost bin is to be a food source for all of those soil dwelling organisms that are caused by the greens. They also provide a lot of bulk to your compost bin, and they also provide airflow so that oxygen can get in and everything can start decomposing. Now, you want to be careful that you're putting in the right ratio. Some people say it is 1 part green to 3 part brown, or 1 part green to 4 part brown. You're going to have to figure that out as you go through it, the process of composting. I suspect that if you're starting to compost now in the fall, then it will probably be 1 to 4. And the reason I say that is the sun isn't as hot and you really do need that heat to help with the whole composting process. The other thing you want to think about is putting water into your compost bin. Now, you don't want your compost to be excessively wet. You just want it to be moist. So every time you go in and you start layering your greens and your browns, you want to make sure that you're adding a little bit of water and then you're giving it a really good mix up. You want to make sure that every time you open up that lid to go in and add more to your compost bin, that you're mixing what was already sitting there. One way to determine whether or not you've added enough browns is going over to your compost bin, and if you can smell an odor coming from it, you know that that's an indicator that you need to add more browns. So you can grab some of the pine needles that you have nearby or some of those leaves that you got from your neighbors and throw them in, and again, give it a good mix up. Now you have your bin and you know how to compost. Now you need seeds. Put together a meal plan that involves a pepper and a couple different kinds of squash. And when you head to the grocery store, make sure that you buy those items. When you get home and you start preparing your meal, you're going to cut into that pepper and you're going to just pull out those pepper seeds, not going to clean them off or anything like that, and you're just going to place them onto a napkin. You're going to leave that napkin on your counter for about a week until they're absolutely dried, and then you're going to place them into an envelope. The squash seeds, you're going to rinse them off and place them on an envelope, or place them on a paper towel and then place them into an envelope a week later as well. Now, I will put down below a link to a video I did on seed saving for those of you that want a little bit more detail, where I go into talking about heirlooms and hybrids. Now, the purpose of saving these seeds from the pepper and the squash are solely for you having seeds to grow food for your family for the next season. They are not for seed exchanges because they will not be true seeds. And you want to ensure that when you enter into a seed exchange, you're providing somebody else true seeds, so that when you say that this is a cucumber and it's this type of cucumber, that's exactly what they're going to get when they grow it. Again, all of that is in the video that I will put the link down below. Now, let's say you want to grow a tomato, but the grocery store doesn't carry the type of tomato that you want to try. I would suggest that you reach out to a family or friend and ask them if they want to split on a packet of seeds with you. A packet of seeds really could last somebody anywhere from 3 to 6 years, depending on how many plants they actually grow. So if you were to split that packet with somebody, that packet is still going to last you a couple years. Now, you can grow those plants and you can ensure that you end up with true seeds at the end of the season, which will then give you seeds for years. Now, if you want, you could also reach out to family and friends who are gardeners, who are actually going to be doing both methods. I know every gardener out there most likely does the seed saving for their own garden and then seed saving for seed exchanges. And you could reach out to them and ask them if they would be willing to part with a couple of their seeds from some of their unique varieties that they have. And I'm sure that any gardener would gladly help out someone who's wanting to start out. The next thing you should be doing is looking online at the Farmer's Almanac to see exactly when you need to plant your seeds inside, as well as direct sowing them straight into your garden for your growing zone. Once you have this, you can then put it into your calendar as a calendar invite so that a week prior to that date you get a notification letting you know that next weekend is seed weekend, which is awesome weekend. So the next thing you're going to need is some containers. And I had a couple people over on the weekend and somebody brought one of those pre-made salads, and as soon as I saw the container, I knew that I was going to use it for seeds. And I just want to show it to you. So this is it here. There was like a Caesar salad in this, and it came with a plastic covering that you ripped off and mixed the whole salad right into the container. And lucky for me, there were 2 of them. So basically what I'm going to do is use one of them. I'm going to put my rings from my canning in the bottom, and you can put anything you want in your container. I'm going to put holes in the bottom of this second container, and then I'm going to put it on top. And the reason I'm going to do this is when my seeds start to germinate and I start to see little seedlings, I'm going to start watering from the bottom. So when I plant my seeds into my potting soil, I'm going to use a spray bottle and spray from the top. After which, I'm then going to be adding water into this bottom container and putting this container back on top. That way the roots will grow deep down into the container and grab the liquid, the water that they need. The other thing that I'd like to point out to you is this container. So this container I got from Dairy Queen. It was my son's birthday last week, and we bought a log cake for him. I'm also going to use this container. I'm going to put some holes in the bottom of it. I'm going to use the lid to fill up with some water, and I'm going to sit it right on it like that. Another idea that you can use are you can go to the dollar store, and for $2.50 per container, you can buy 2 of these containers. And again, it's going to be the same thing. You want to put something on the bottom so that the second container isn't sitting right in the water. You're going to then put holes in the second container and drop it right on top. Once you have your seeds planted in your soil and you're now looking for an area in your house to place them, a couple things to keep in mind. I know a lot of people have grow light systems, and they go out and they purchase a very expensive grow light because they think that that's the best method. And it very well may be a great method, but it's not the only method. There are a lot of other ways that you can germinate your seeds without spending a lot of money on grow lights. One idea is a lot of people use their fluorescent lights that they have hanging in their garage. So if you have something like that, you could use that. The only thing is you have to make sure that your seedlings do not get too close to that fluorescent light because the light will burn them. Now, I took a quick peek on Facebook Marketplace, and you can actually get fluorescent lights, the whole thing, the fixture and the light bulbs, for about $10–15. So it's not overly expensive if that's the way that you want to go. The other thing that you can do is, if you have a window or a doorway that, a sliding door that you're not going to be using in the wintertime, that gets a lot of sun, you can actually put your container right there in the windowsill or by the door. And the sun will heat that container up, and I guarantee you, your seeds will germinate. I have a lot of friends that do not have grow light setups, but actually use the natural light from their windows to germinate their seeds. Once your seedlings start to grow and you feel that they are outgrowing that container that you initially planted the seeds in, you can pot them up. Now, one of the ideas I have that may help you in keeping with your budget is using your old coffee cups. So if you go to Tim Hortons, Coffee Time, Dunkin' Donuts, whichever coffee shop you go to, save your cup, rinse it out when you get home, put a hole in the bottom of the cup, and then transplant your seedling into that cup. Other ways other methods that you can use are newspapers. You can roll up newspaper and make a little dish out of that. Another idea might be, if you go to somebody's house and they are using solo cups, you can kindly ask them if you could take those cups at the end of the night, all the used ones, rather than putting them into the recycling bin. Ask them if you can take those solo cups, and when you get home, rinse them out, and again, put the hole in the bottom of the cup, and then place them into a container so that you can still water them from below. I hope these ideas have helped you and maybe will encourage you to garden next year. I hope that some of these things are things that you can do throughout the winter months and during this next phase of COVID. I'm hoping that more people out there can become more self-sufficient. Thanks for spending time with me.